The Butterfly King, Chapter 1, Chessboards, Rabbits, and Sweaters. Seattle always loved chess, just as his father had, but he never met his father. He had been raised by his sister Ina, who took care of most of the house chores when she had some free time or visited the elderly in the nursing home down the street because she worked as a CNA. She was 28, and Susie, Seattle's younger sister, would giggle and they'd wrestle when she'd call Ina an old maid. Seattle didn't really have time for that sort of thing. He always had his head in a book or article written about or by Gary Kasparov, Josh Watson, or Bobby Fischer. Elsewise, he was playing chess on the computer or in person. He had several boards and was playing continually with his two sisters or Ina's boyfriend, Josh. He liked Josh, and so did Susie. There was laundry everywhere in the house, and somewhere they had two cats and chessboards half played out littered on the floor. Fuzzy, the one cat, had knocked over one of Seattle's boards he had been working for months on with Josh. He was only down to 5 pieces, but had lost his queen and most of his main players. As Ina came in through the screen door with the groceries, she set them on the kitchen counter. She was in the middle of a phone conversation with Josh, and Susie was monologuing to Seattle about the different species of rabbits that lived in the Americas prior to British colonial times. Seattle didn't mind. He never listened anyways. He wasn't really into rabbits. But Susie was. Dr. Sanchez, PhD, the local child psychiatrist, through Bright Aid Inc., said she and Seattle both had Asperger's. But Seattle still wasn't convinced. He wanted to be 100% certain she wasn't just a quack. That's what Josh called her. Ina disagreed, so they had to go to her anyways. It was so boring, and Seattle really didn't mind continuing his chess game with the good doctor. He was winning, as it were. He always won. That was just how it was. His father, Michael, had been very good at the game. His mother had been a veterinarian before they had passed away. Ina yelled, "Dinner! Hey, wash your hands, you two! And Susie, I'm watching you!" Ina made a hand motion eye to spout to Susie. Susie nodded and pulled up the stool so she could reach the sink. She hated the feeling of the water. It was what Dr. Sanchez called sensitivity issues. Seattle was all for it. In fact, he oftentimes couldn't get enough hand washing done. He also touched corners of things and would step on square tiles at Forest Park Elementary School. Everybody said that Seattle was weird, but Susie didn't mind because he was her big brother. And you always got points for big brothers in Forest Park Elementary School. Of course, Susie had been skipped ahead a grade to first grade because she was smarter than all the other kids in kindergarten. But Ina worried she would have socialization problems. She said it was a big headache and she had to talk to Susie's and Seattle's teachers constantly, along with Principal Hines, to keep them out of special ed. She didn't want them getting made fun of like Ina had when she was little. There was this one kid in the third who was always making fun of the way that Seattle used big words. Ina said that it was because he couldn't say big words like annexing or communism. Susie could tell that it bothered Seattle a lot when George Garrison, that was the bully's name, made fun of the way he acted. Apparently, George Garrison had behavioral problems too. "Ina, what did you get?" asked Susie. Seattle was reading the latest chess article and moving a piece simultaneously that was next to his dinner plate and a washed-up old sweater. Ina subsequently moved her pawn. I'm on the phone, Susy. Can you wait a minute? Said Ina. Susy continued to pester her, but I want to know what you got. Show me. Oh, did you know that one of the main characters in Alice in Wonderland was a hare? And Alice in Wonderland was written by Lewis Carroll. He was a mathematician who worked with categories and he was a preacher. Susie said, pulling a carrot out of the bag for Thomas Jefferson, her smallest bunny, who was a girl. Fried chicken, Susie, said Seattle, grabbing a leg and taking a bite. Ina smacked his hand away from the brown paper grocery bag. Not until we pray, she said chastisingly. They prayed before every meal, oftentimes saying the Our Father and 3 Hail Marys. Ina was hyper-religious, so everybody else had to be too. After they said their prayers, Seattle was the first to grab a bite. He needed fat because it was brain power. Most of the brain was made of fat. He had read that somewhere in one of his mom's old medical textbooks from graduate school. Veterinarians had to do a lot of schooling, apparently. Later that night, Ina and Seattle and Susie all knelt down and said their bedtime prayers, and Ina tucked Susie and Seattle into the covers and said good night. Then she went downstairs to get a glass of bourbon to relax. She only drank a glass because a good woman was conservative.